Now this new exercise with less money from the evaluation, the essence that it's very good.
That's 30%, and we got 30%. It's 928.
I think the national will probably be still. It is already influenced since.
Shrek, do you see this slide well? Professor, Italy.
Yes, everything is fine. I don't know if Achilles want to say something before, or shall we wait a little bit?
You see whole slide without any other elements on the slide?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Excellent. But still people are coming.
Okay, just do you see me?
Yes. Okay, let's start. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank
Yes,
you.
good morning. Yes,
Okay,
good morning. Yes, good morning to everyone, to the speakers, the participants. Thank you very much for your interest to attend this webinar. I'm Fotinis Yogu from Center of Research and Technology, ELAS, who is the organizer of this webinar. The webinar is organized within the framework of the Euraxis Project ERA Talent Platform. And Professor Miroslav Trajanovic, as well as Professor Nikola Korunovic, both from the University of Nice, Department of Mechanical Engineering, were so kind to be speakers in this webinar and to help us to be more familiar with the open science principles, the aspect, the objective of the open science. We hope that after this webinar, we'll be more familiar about and get a practical experience in the implementation of the open science concept. Finally, another aim of this webinar is to facilitate us to gain some skills on how to protect the intellectual rights in the era of open science. As you know, the intellectual property rights is very critical issue for the research community. That's all from me. So let's give the floor to Professor Nikola, who will start the webinar with the topic, principle and concept of open science. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Trajanovic will start with the first few slides and introduction, please.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Otini, thank you very much for introduction. And let's start. Once again, good morning, everyone. I'm happy that Professor Nikola Korunovic and me, we will have opportunity today to show only the most important aspect of open science and IPR. So the whole webinar should last around 2 hours, and of course we will give answer on the questions that you have. So if you have questions, please put it in the chat, and we will give answer to you. So please, next slide. So what's the goal of this webinar? Is first of all to give you one introduction to open science, very general. Then we will go we will deliver the deeper insight into the elements of open science, and we will try to do it through the real life examples and exercises. Okay, so probably maybe you can ask the question, why to take a training on open science? In short, it is one of the most important, let's say, most important approach in the science in the last 20 years. Actually, the term open science relates to the movement and the approach to science it promotes. It is extremely important not only in last decade, maybe last 20 years, but in last decade more and more it is obligatory. In Europe, this open science is recognized through a large number of European Commission's projects and initiatives that support and promote application of principles of open science. We will pass to those principles and try to explain them to you. Starting from Horizon 2020, the open science was mandatory in the field it was mandatory to apply some of the principles, not all. First of all, open access. But starting with the Horizon Europe, more and more principles are obligatory, and you will see what and why. There is a next slide, please. There is a many topics, and I will give a floor now to Nikola to explain some of the most important principles of the open science. Nikola, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor. As you can see, there are many topics listed in this slide. This is, in fact, this training, this short workshop is a part of a larger training that we used to keep for a day or two, depending on the occasion or the audience. So we don't have the time to talk about every topic today, but the most important topic you can see here in bold, those topics we will have time to discuss, not maybe as interactively as we would normally do, but you will have this material that also have some exercises and some questions that you can work for yourself later. So I hope that you can have the most out of this relatively short webinar for this topic. So we would start with just defining what openness is. What does it mean to be open? Open means that anyone can freely access some content, can use it, modify, and share for any purpose. And what at most is the requirement is to preserve the origin and open it, to say who is, for example, the original author of some work, but this is the only obligatory thing when something is truly open. Now we start with principles and content concepts of open science, and there are many definitions of open science. For example, one interesting definition is that is the movement to make the scientific research, data, and dissemination accessible to all levels of acquiring society. This is the definition by Foster. It was an important project in the beginning, European project related to open science. And then there is one definition that practically says it all in detail. It says that open science is the practice of science in such a way that others can collaborate and contribute, where research data, lab notes, and other research processes are freely available under the terms that enable reuse, redistribution, and reproduction of the research and its underlying data and methods. There are many keywords here that are practically the keywords to open science. That's a pretty much complete definition, but it's not very practical to use in everyday life. And the third is is related to ICT, because ICT is very important enabler of open science. Open science aims at transforming science through ICT tools, networks, and media to make research more open, global, collaborative, creative, and closer to society. But those who support open science, they say a very simple thing, that this is nothing else than research simply done properly, done as it should be done. And many people really respected those principles of open science 100 or 20, 200 years ago. And we will talk about this a little bit later from the angle of researchers. Very shortly, what are the drivers of open science? One obvious driver is if you have some funders, like Ministry of Science, like some institutions, like academies, governments, they want, if they invest in something, to have something in return. And often this is accelerated social and economic growth, for example, innovation. So they want to have this in return. And one of the ways to have everything openly accessible and achieve this goal. Then there is something between researchers that is recognized to drive cultural change in research, and then also to embrace new web-based tools and technology that really, more than before, facilitate scientific collaboration. In this moment, when we have more time and we are in the classroom with our colleagues, we ask this question: what do you think? What are the pros of open science? And on the other hand, what do you think are the cons of open science? So take just a few seconds to think, and I think you already have generally some opinions about that. What is the, for example, pro? What is a positive side of open science from your angle? We are assuming that you are mostly researchers here, maybe some other stakeholders, but me, I am a researcher, as an associate professor, so I entered this area because mainly it was my interest to see what is it all about, and then later prepare this training. So when we generally ask about pros, maybe you will recognize that here frequently mentioned pros are that it's easy to share information, and if you want your research to reach a wide audience in short time, open science is a good way. That's the most common answer we get. About the cons, I think maybe more of you even will see this. It's about someone else getting your results of your research for free, and this question, everlasting question of intellectual property rights. We'll try to address all this in this training today, especially related to some most common topics. But before that, maybe you surely you have the chance to read and listen a lot about open science, but we'll try to see this from the angle of researchers to really be positive and see how this can contribute positively to our research. As this is open science, you can see I'm using some slides that are also created by some other people. And in the right lower corner, lower right, you can see that I am giving the attribution to those who were the original creators of this slide. I'm also mentioning the type of open license under which this material is distributed. We will talk about this in detail later. So according to Medical Research Council of UK, the practice of good researchers is to strive for excellence and take responsibility, then to respect the law, research ethics, and professional standards. And then we have something that is open science practically, to support a culture of transparency, openness, and honesty towards other researchers and the public, maximize public benefit, avoid research waste, and continue learning and mentor others. Transparency is the key word here, very important. There are many keywords, but this is maybe the central one. And we will explain this on this example of confirmatory research process. As you may be familiar, there are two kinds of research processes, exploratory and confirmatory. In the first one, you just, from your research, try to find some hypothesis. You don't have the hypothesis at the beginning, but something that is done maybe more and more respected generally is to have the formulation of hypothesis, and then through your work, start to see is approved or not. Is this hypothesis confirmed? So it should be, this process should start from a formulation of hypothesis and analysis plan, then data collection, analyzing data according to some analysis plan, interpreting results and reporting it, for example, in a journal, then publish it, in journal, and replication in the end to perform some other study that the same methodology will also confirm or not the same thing. But unfortunately, this is what may happen and happens. Instead of formulating hypotheses, many researchers just invent some hypothesis maybe, and then there's no analysis plan at all. Also, unfortunately, some people fake the data, not collect real data. Then when data is analyzed, the analysis is biased according to confirming the hypothesis. So this is called p-hacking. You may read about this. Then also one thing, maybe negative thing, is interpreting results. Usually journals take only interesting results, something that looks very new or just plain interesting. And then when you publish something in a journal, those are often the journals that are not accessible to anyone, but they're behind so-called paywall. You have to pay, or your institution has to pay to access those results. And finally, instead of replication, which is a good practice, they just invent some new hypothesis and go on and on in circles. So you may ask yourself, why should someone do this? This, I have to say, is not intentional in many cases. It's not that those researchers and we are villains or something like that, but you have this so-called science hamster wheel that you can see, and you're, I suppose, very familiar with. There is a constant pressure to publish for any researcher because they have to keep their jobs, they have to get new funding, etc., etc. So they generally we work a lot. We work nights, mornings, all day, try many things, generally to get some, as they say here, sexy results, some very cool results that can be published. Based on these publications, researchers get this classical metrics like age index, based on these high impact publications, based on citations, media attentions, and so on, etc. Based on this age index or similar metrics, researchers get funded, they get promoted at something, but to keep the wheel spinning, they have to hire more students, and they go on and on and on. So that's why I say it's generally not intentional thing, but that's the situation at the moment. And the open science is one means of fighting against such practices or trying to make research better in this way that you can see in this slide, for example. It has some specific tools for every stage of confirmative research process. For example, in the first stage of hypothesis formulation, there is so-called pre-registration that at the beginning, everyone can openly see through your report in the first phase, a registered report, what is your hypothesis, what do you plan to do. There is also power analysis statistical tool that will say what number of experiments, how many samples there should be for this analysis to be valid. And then after this, data collection also can be done in open notebooks, so everyone can see the data you collected and use those data also. Then when you analyze data, open code is preferred because anyone can see how this code deals with your data. It's not a black box. Then when interpreting and reporting results, there is something called also open data, and a very important part of open science, also open materials. Later we will talk about this. And then something that you are most familiar with, when you publish in open access, and that is called the registered report in the second phase. And finally, this should not be the last stop. Then you do the replication study. You use those methods on different sets of data, and you try also to get the same conclusions. So in summary, why transparency? By having such practices, scientists practically increase the trust in himself. When you see that somebody is doing everything transparently, there's no doubt about his knowledge, about his ethics, about anything that makes a good researchers. So also with doing everything openly, you can get a lot of constructive feedback. It's a better chance that you will get feedback if you give things openly, and then you may, in the very early stage of your research, have some feedback that will guide you in the real good direction. Maybe somebody will save you a year of the work just by discussing your work together. Also, in this way, you can involve some people that otherwise you could not reach, be international and inclusive, people from other countries far away who didn't have access to your work for many reasons. And all this together should increase the speed of discovery and science overall. So this is what it should look like, what is the general idea of open science. Of course, there are some obstacles, we will talk about this, but if you ask yourself why, this is one hint why it should be used. We saw that there are many topics, but some of those topics are called the pillars of open science. They are maybe the most important to hold everything together, and those are open data, open materials, open access, open source, open peer review, and open educational resources. You will see that we will not cover many of those because they're relatively simple to see what that's all about. But this is those are the pillars. Also, some important practices. Transparency in research is one thing, then reproducibility of research. Also, we saw replicability, and reproducibility is similar but not the same. We don't have the time to discuss in details. Open metrics, open licensing, citizen science, open science policies, and open advocacy. So now, at this moment, I will pass the floor to Professor Trajanovic, who will present you one of our projects that may be considered open science. So, Professor, please continue.
Okay, stop sharing your screen. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So now we will start with one very important subtopic of open science. It is citizen science. What is citizen science? It is actually, in very short, involvement of non-academic public in the process of scientific research. It means open science means sharing of knowledge, data, different tools as early as possible, not only between researchers and between disciplines, but also with society at large. It's European Commission definition of citizen science in open science too. The citizens do scientific work alone or with researchers, or often working together with expert or scientific institution. Citizen science is both an aim and enabler of open science. In most of the case, citizens support the collection, do analysis or description of research data. Later on, I will show you some examples. Let's say there are many different ways how to include citizens in the research. The most simple case is so-called passive sensing. I will give you an example for every type of activity of citizen. So passive sensing, the one of example is collecting data from the smartphones or smart watches of citizens. They are the citizens do nothing. They are just share data from their phone, smartphones or smartwatches with the researchers. Then we have voluntary computing. When citizens allow free capacity, use of free capacity of their computers. Then we have voluntary thinking, very nice approach in citizen science. And one example is classification all different animals caught in millions of camera trap images. Then environmental ecological observation. let's say, identification of birds in some region. Also, we have another type of activities, participatory sensing, where citizens use their smartphone to monitor, let's say, noise in different locations. One of the very, very useful type of activity is participation in studies, in different studies. Most of them are connected with in pharmaceutical industry, when citizens actually are including in studies of new drugs, efficiency of new drugs, or participation in experiments, it's so-called crowdsourcing. I will show you later on one example of participation in experiment. Why citizens are, what is their motivation to be included in the project? There are two kinds of motivation. One is intrinsic, and second is extrinsic. So let's say one of intrinsic motivation is unique ethos of the citizen. But if you the pandan of that for extrinsic motivation is the build of career, or let's say, if we speak about learning as intrinsic, then strength, social relation is extrinsic motivation, and so on. You can see here a list of different type of motivation. Sometimes it is fun, recreation, self-efficiency. Sometimes is connected with career, reputation, monetary return, reciprocity, system trust, or networking. So as you can see, there are many motivations why citizens are interesting to be part of citizen science project. The citizen science is very, very popular, because especially in environment science, medical science, smart city science, and so on. And if you are interested, you can find more information of the link provided here. You will get the presentation, so you can study more on that, of these topics later on. But if you think about citizen science project, you have to get to answer first to next three questions. How are you going to engage citizen? In which way? How are you going to ensure the data quality? It is very critical issue. So sometimes the data collected from the citizen are not so reliable. You have to train them in order to be sure that the data collected from the citizen are reliable. In last question, how are you going to deal with ethic and legal issue that can arise during the implementation of citizen science project? In order to present you, in order to make you closer to open science and to show you the benefits from open science, we develop a portal, OpenClick portal, in the framework of our OpenClick project, just because to show to our PhD students, to our researchers, what are the benefits from first of all from citizen science project and then from open science project. To do that, as I told you, we developed project, OpenClick project, and there is a portal, OpenClick. You can easily reach it. The address, web address is openclick.rs. You can find the link in the presentation, and there are many goals of this portal. First is to learn about open science, and you can see here a different topics on open science, starting from, let's say, what is the open science, so you can learn from this portal. Then we explain a project, OpenClick project, a methodology behind the project, who are the participants, what the data are produced by the OpenClick project, what software, and we explain the software and methodology behind the software. And we put some link to some published paper about the project. Then in the many resource, you can download source code or download the data sets. Of course, those data sets are open, so you can download it. It's Excel file with all collected data, so you can anybody can download data sets and analyze the data set in order to find the answer to some research questions. So everything is open, as you can see. Okay, now I will show you the most important part of the portal. It is OpenClick program. It is a program which allows user to assess their physical status, their skills and abilities of the people based on human-computer interaction tests. Till now, we had more than 5,000 participants, and they did 75,000 tests. And all those the data collected, all those data collected from these 75,000 tests are open, and you can download to use it. Okay, so as I told you, there are in total there are 9 different tests. Some of them are very simple, but some of them are comprehensive, and they clearly show the status of your sensors system, then your brain, then your nervous system, and finally your muscles. Let me show the first one. Is totally simple. Is so for every test you have clear instruction how to do this, and in this simple case you should just click in this red button as fast as you can. So I will do it now for you. It lasts 10 seconds. And now the test is finished. You see this sign. So now I can see results of my test. There are three presentation of results. First one is histogram. So I can see it's my results are this red line. So my average is 4 clicks per second. But you see that some people have much more. It's usually younger people. So I'm a little bit slow because I'm old. Okay, it can be one of the explanation. But you can also see your history of your test. I did this test many times. Actually, how much? 52 times. So during the time, you see that my results are mainly between 4 and 5 clicks per second. Sometimes I'm very good, but sometimes I'm really bad. And it is not by the case, it is actually a state of my whole system. Let's say this that day, this day here, it was the morning after the birthday party of my wife, and I was very, very slow. The similar is another case after another party, but mostly I'm between 4 and 5 clicks. So it's clearly shows that my state of my organism. Why it can be useful? It can be useful, let's say, just one example. If you are receiving therapy after some injury or your hand or your eyes or whatever, you can see is there any improvement in the therapy, and you can follow your state during the time. It is just one example. Okay, and let me show you another test, which is a little bit comprehensive. So now I will get assignment to reach some point on the screen. And I should do it as fast as I can, but not, we are measuring not only the time, but we measure how straight are my movement of the hand. So let me see, I have to pick every position. And before I finish it, I just to show you that, look at my movement are not straight, is crooked, is it, the movement has shape of the curved lines. So it means that my coordination between my eyes and my muscles are not so well. So I will finish now with this test, and I can also check results to see how good I am. So as I told you, there are 9 different tests. So I can choose what test I would like to present in radar diagram. But it will take a time because there is too many data. Okay, when you do this test in your house, be patient to get your radar diagram, because the radar diagram put on the one picture all your result of all your tests, so you can compare you with the rest of the population. We don't have a time now to wait for data processing. The radar is look like this, you know. So there is a 9 axis, and you can see your behavior compared with other people. So now imagine I do only couple of two tests, but imagine that you have in the database 75,000 of the test result of the test. So you can process those data in order to find answer to some of your research questions. Let's say, because let's say there is a test of typing, and maybe your research question is who is more precise in typing, women or males or females, or what is the speed, average speed for typing for people between 40 and 50s compared with the people between 20 and 30s, and so on, you know. So why is good? So there, I would like to underline two main things. First, everybody can be included in the experiments. It's not offensive. It's even fun. It can be helpful for somebody who is recovering from some disease. This is one part of the story. It is real citizen science. A second important issue is that the data collected are available, free available, open, explained, methodology is explained, so everybody can use the same data to answer to another and some new research questions. So I hope that it's explained to you why citizen science is good, and second, why it's good to have open data. It is for now all from my side, and now I will give a floor to Nikola. Let me stop sharing. Okay, Nikola, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hope you can see open access slide.
Yes.
Okay. So the next topic is something that maybe was your first contact with open science. Maybe something that everyone heard at first. And now we will try to talk a little bit more than maybe you had idea about. Especially what I think may be important for you is how to share your papers in some journals by yourself. There are many ways that people are not aware of. Some of you, of course, are. But let's start from the beginning. What is open access? It is definition is that those are research publications, for example, articles in journals or books that can be accessed online, free of charge by anybody, with no technical obstacles. So anyone can download it, does not have to be researchers, no logins are required, no registration, nothing. Ideally, in addition, you should have rights to copy, distribute, search those data, those papers, scroll, etc. There are various modes of open access, and we will explain them all now and what is in fact real open access. So if you wonder if something is open access, the first thing is to look at the directory of open access journal. If the journal is there listed, then it is really an open access journal. As you can see, there are more than 20,000 journals at the moment listed at this directory. So by definition, by basic criteria of this directory, a journal must provide free access to its contents, but it also must license them to allow reusability. So it's not all about access. Licensing is also important. So our next topic after open access will be open licensing. Many people think that open access means that you have to pay for publishing, which is the common mistake because many of the best journals, they charge. But generally, it's not the case. In fact, more journals do not charge. For example, at the moment you have 13,578 journals that are completely free and open access. And those who charge, they have this model of charging the fee that we will discuss a bit later. So gold open access, what does it mean? It means that the published work is made available immediately after publication. So tomorrow or this day when it's published, everyone can access it without any restrictions. And then there is this business model, so-called, that very often you have to pay, or your institution has to pay once, usually pretty large fees, for this, for example, paper to be published. The other important thing that I mentioned is green open access, also called self-archiving. The idea was, the reason for green open access is that many funders requested that, for example, papers are immediately accessible to anyone after publishing, and so that the papers get to adjust their policies, the publishers, and so you have some granted rights now. For example, you can publish your final paper, but more often peer-reviewed manuscript that is not finally made in some online repository. We will also discuss this in more detail. So there is also one thing called the embargo period that's often present, and we will also discuss it. So for example, you have to wait for a year or two for this paper to be accessible. So we mentioned different kind of papers. One of those is so-called preprints. It's getting more and more popular. Preprints is a document that you prepare, for example, paper that you prepare that is still not peer-reviewed, but it's sent, for example, to the publisher. Maybe it's not even sent. Some journals like IEEE journals, they distinguish those things. Is this just your prepared paper that you put somewhere, or is it the paper that you already sent for reviewing? Also, it is the same paper, but they have this difference in their definitions. So more and more scientists are ready to write a paper and put it on a preprint server, where often you have some open peer reviews that anyone can comment on your paper, and you can even make open discussions about the paper. So that's the way to make your research available very early. Of course, that there may be pros and cons, but that's up to you and up to the occasion to decide. Talking about embargo period, it can be from 0 to 16 months, but usually it's 12 or 24 months. So after this embargo period, this paper may become publicly available. This all is defined in the policy of the publisher of the journal, And we will see later how we can discover this policy for every journal. We say that green open access is a possible option. And if you publish something yourself, you can do it in some repositories. And at the moment you see 5,600 repositories and more available. You can see those repositories in this registry of open access repositories. You will have this presentation available after this training, and you can click on all those links and then further explore the options. So there are generally three kinds of repositories. The first are institutional repositories that an institution makes available. For example, your faculty or your university can give you the repository for all the workers or all the researchers to publish there. Then you have subject-based repositories that are usually just grouped about some topic or some area of science. And maybe most important for your harvesters, those repositories, they aggregate the content from different repositories. So if you want to search for a repository or for some content, you can get best results in those harvesters. Maybe the most well-known one is Zenodo. So it's also EU co-founded, and many of you also had the chance to hear about this. But in addition to gold and green open access that are maybe the most well-known one, there are some other modes of open access. They're often confused and mixed up between each other. So we will now precisely define which is which. One very common situation is to have so-called hybrid open access. What's the idea? The idea is that journals that usually are behind the paywall, the papers in these journals that you have to pay to read the paper from this journal, it also has an additional option for you to publish in this journal. From the angle of institution that pays or somebody who pays, it's a double. You have to pay twice. For example, your institution pays to have access to papers, and then it pays to the same journal for you to publish in this journal. But it was the simple idea because those journals very often have a good reputation. They use this opportunity because open access now is a trend. They use the opportunity to charge a lot to give this open access option. Okay, they will not take some money from someone downloading your paper, but they will charge you to give it in open access. Then a good option is platinum open access. It is a good option if it's a good journal with a reputation because it does not charge anything. Most often those journals are, for example, volunteer work. As I know, university finance journals are very often. For example, University of Niš, in which we work, has a Facta Universitatis journal with very good high impact factor that does not charge anything to be published in completely open access. And there is one final category. It's maybe not an official category, but this is something that people can mix up with, for example, gold open access. It's we can call it bronze open access. So at first glance, this journal, when you access it, looks like a real open access journal, gold one. But why? Because it's free to read papers, everything looks fine to download, to use it. But license is usually the problem. So this license is not really an open license. And if you use it, you may have problem with this content. So we will talk about this a little bit later. The criteria, in order not to be wrong, is to check if this journal is in this directory of open access journal. If it is not, then there perhaps and most probably is the problem with licenses. So this does not have to be intentional. Maybe this publisher did not have a real good idea about which license should be used, but you have to be careful about this. And there is also one thing that you also may be aware of. It's called predatory publishers. This term comes from a list that American librarian Jeffrey Bill made. He tried to recognize and to list the publishers that publish in open access regime. They charge very high fees, but practically there is no review process and quality control. They just take you the money and publish because people need something to be published there. And of course, you may wonder why people publish in a journal that's bad. It certainly has some good impact factor or something else. Those journals, in fact, those publishers, they have some schemes to say how to make these factors. For example, it's a double citation. I cite the papers from your journal, you cite the papers from mine. And when sometimes it was very transparent that people make 3 journals in the circle. So I cite you, you cite me, and in the circle. So that's something that maybe in the beginning was not so easy to discover, but this Jeffrey fellow did it, and many journals made then pressure to remove this list because they said, oh no, we are not like that, we are okay, so something like that. So this journal list is now moved to this address that you see, the new address, and you can read about special cases. What is the jeopardy here? It may happen that this journal is put on blacklist. So maybe you can publish your paper, and then your Minister of Science or your founder just puts it on the blacklist, and it does not count for your promotion or anything else. So you have to be careful about it. But as I said in the beginning, maybe the most important question here is how to determine self-archiving policy of a journal. In fact, many people, including, I must say, me, in the beginning, are frightened to try and publish themselves some paper. That's the property, intellectual property transferred to a journal, because they wonder if they will have some consequences if they break some license or something like that. In fact, it is not so easy to go to a publisher site and then find this policy. But luckily, some people recognize this. It was done in UK, because in UK you have also some very strict and different policies of funders that request the funding if they find something to immediately be available. So they made this portal, Sherpa Romeo, that is now used by many researchers, publishers, founders, anyone. It's very, very useful. So we will go there. I will now go to sharing screen, not only this presentation, and I will show you an example of how a journal that we wrote can be shared, for example. So I will stop this and I will share my screen. I hope you can see this. Okay. So this is the example, the task for our exercise. There is a paper written by the authors from my university. It's called Real-Time Monitoring of Bone Fracture Recovery by Using Aware Sensing Smart and Active Orthopedic Devices. The journal name is IEEE Internet of Things Journal. So I will copy this name of the journal, and I will go to this portal, Sherpa Romeo. So now you can see the start page of the portal, and here you have journal title or ISSN. I will paste the name and click search. What you I hope can see, I will try to make it a little bit larger, is the green open access publishing policy of this journal and generally of the publisher itself. Usually the publisher has similar policies or the same policies for different journals, but also it does not have to be the same. So the first section here gives you some overview, the general information, like title, what is the link to the page of this journal, etc. And what is important for every researcher is publisher policies. What you have listed here are so-called pathways. In the next 10 or 15 slides in the presentation that you will get after this, you have this, what I'm talking to you, and written down, so you can read it again and try it yourself. But I will show you now live. First, we have to distinguish between different versions, and I will say it again. We have a preprints. In IEEE, it is accepted version only. So if you send your paper that is prepared to them, they call it submitted version. After the review process is complete and positive for you, if the paper is accepted, then there is a new version of the paper called accepted version. It is final concerning content, but it's not final concerning the looks, the editing, the final shape like it would be published in the paper. And published version is what they publish on site. It's completely prepared with all the elements of this journal. So what does this portal say to us? First, we have the option for the published version. We click on this plus, and then the first pathway, the first way in which you can publish it yourself is the open access option. It's simply, you see this sign means there is a fee, you have to pay open access fee. So if you pay additionally, and you will see this is a lot, then it's completely open access, like it was gold open access. So that's what the second line says. There will be no embargo period if you pay. There will be a license that is the most open of all. We will discuss this later, CC BY. Copyright owner, copyright is not transferred to the journal if you pay. Then it stays the author's copyright. So location is, of course, journal website because it would be published there, but also any website. You can download this version. So in summary, if you pay a lot, you can do everything you want. That's the first pathway. Okay, author must contact publisher stating Creative Commons attribution requirement. The publisher gives you exact lines to put in your self-published paper. Then the second option is also about published version. It's also the only difference here is the license. You may choose different kind of license. This is CC BY, non-commercial, non-derivatives. We will talk about this later. In general, that means that you don't allow people to change your work and build on it, but to keep it without derivatives, and non-commercial. You don't allow commercial use of your work. And then it's all practically the same. You have to pay also, but then different is license, no embargo, but you also difference is that the site in which you publish must be non-commercial. That's the main difference. Okay, so if we want the published version, you have to pay, and of course this is usually not a good option for us. But luckily, what we are searching for is for other researchers to see our full paper without us paying the open access option, but publishing it ourselves. It is called green open access. It is the accepted version pathway. The first option here is to publish it in your own homepage. in institutional repository, institutional website, or a named repository. So that practically, this is the complete paper, and you can publish it here. As you can see, you cannot publish it, for example, ResearchGate or some other social networks, because this option is not for this. But practically, you can make your paper available, and other people can download it without you having to pay. So next option, you see very many options here. It's mostly because of UK special policies, but for us, all universal thing is also here. You, if your founder, as is for example specific for UK, if your founder wants to publish it in its website, then you have 24 months embargo. Also accepted version here. If your founder requires, for example, this is specific for UK, to be immediately available, you can you have founder designated location. Okay, it's similar, and it's not probably for anyone here. What we have next is a CC BY. Is yes, for special funders, only for Welcome Trans and other UK funders. And finally, submitted version. This is the paper that has not been under peer review. You can publish it also on your homepage, funder designated location. Some institutional repositories, preprint repositories that are also popular nowadays. And you can see there is nothing special that you have to do, only to ask IEEE about some lines that should be included, especially in this paper, to know that it's sent for review. So if you choose to do it, you can do it freely, but still, let's see the last option, submitted version. It's academic social network. So you can also publish it on academic social network, but here you can see it must be a signatory of STM sharing principles. For you to be completely clear about this, ResearchGate is not, for example, a signatory of STM sharing principle, because there is allegations about ResearchGate that it is privately financed and that it makes available a lot of content with some proprietary licensed content without proper licensing and everything. So there is some dispute going on, and you must be careful, because if you publish this on ResearchGate, it would not be okay, and you could be sued by IEEE. So that is why this is very useful portal, in my opinion, this Sherpa Romeo. And now we will get back for a moment. I will just show you what else you can find here. So this is the first publication example, and those next slides are just what I told you. It's constantly changing, so excuse me if there's something that is maybe outdated. I try to make it update. One thing that you didn't see immediately, that now the charge of open access in this journal is almost $2,500. So that's why people say, yes, it can be very tricky, but you see there is a way to avoid this charge. Of course, if it's normally your paper is accepted. Then you will have an exercise for yourself. We don't have time to let you do it now, but please try to do it yourself. This slide, open access exercise, give you the steps, what you should do. The steps are more or less what you saw now me doing. And I gave, for example, 2 papers here, with me being this first author here. Why I chose those two papers? Because the first one you will see is gold open access probably, and the second one is standard behind the paywall paper. And there, in the second case, you should be very careful about how you can publish it in green open access. Or you can try any paper of yourself or your colleague and try Sherpa Romeo to see how you can publish this. So answers. That is only for your later exercise. Now I will stop sharing this and go back to presentation. Okay. We mentioned a few times now open licensing, intellectual property rights. It's something that is related to previous topics, and now we'll address it directly. So first, let's shortly define what intellectual property is. You know what is your physical property, but it's tangible, you can touch it, but intellectual property is intangible. It's a creation of human intellect. And there are two types of intellectual property rights. We have industrial property rights, for example, patents, trademarks, etc., industrial designs, and we have copyright. What we are talking about now is copyright, and copyright is a form of intellectual property that grants the creator of some creative work an exclusive legal right to determine whether and under which condition this work may be copied and used by others, and usually this lasts for a limited time. So you may wonder, what is this monkey doing here? You may Google this interesting case if you want to amuse you. This is the case when some American photographer went to the jungle to photograph animals, and this monkey stole his camera and made a few selfies of himself. So in American US law, the animal art is not subjected to copyright. So now I can freely use this image and share it and do whatever I want with it, because the monkey, for example, did not have the rights to have copyright on this image. But joke aside, what is for us important about copyright with journals, many journals still require that when you publish, then you transfer full copyright to the journal. That's very bad for a researcher, because now he cannot decide himself how to use his own work, but has to ask the publisher, please, may I use my own work? So some uses may be granted by default. For example, the journal may declare that you can use your paper for teaching, for sharing with your colleagues, and especially important in this context is what I told you, the green open access. How can you self-archive and share your papers? And as opposed to this licensing, we have open licensing as a part of open access. And first, let's define what license is. A license is a legal document that grants specific rights to user to reuse and redistribute the material under some conditions. So you may apply a license not only to papers, but to sound, to text, to image, to anything. Like I maybe didn't mention, but all those things are by default, by many national laws, copyrighted. You don't have to state anything. If you are the creator of, for example, a song, you have the right to decide who can use it and how can use the song. If they use it without your permission, he or she is breaking this copyright. So opposed to license, free content license are licenses that grant permission to access, reuse, and redistribute material with few or without any restrictions. So in this case, you are the one who decides what the others can do with your content. So this is what is written here, I told you already. So any creative work is automatically copyrighted. It falls under copyright terms, and that's why you see this all rights reserved phrase often. So you, as an author, you reserve or hold the right for own use of this material. But if you specify an open license, there is no more all rights reserved phrase, but it changes to some rights reserved. So you decide how the work is shared, and now we will see what licenses do we have. Concerning scientific work, this is the way, if you specify the open license for your work, you choose the open license for you to decide how the others can reuse your work. So what you are probably all now aware of, the most used licenses are so-called Creative Commons licenses, those licenses that are marked with CC. Depending on the type, there are a few types of licenses. No matter what license you choose, you always are obliged to attribute the authors or somebody who uses your work on which you put CC license is always obliged to attribute the authors or you, to give you the credit or indicate the changes that he or she made on your work. Depending on the type of license, you may or not may be free, or someone may not or may be free to adapt, to remix, to transform, to build upon some work. And also commercial use may or may not be allowed. There are also so-called public domain related CC licenses, and now you have the phrase all rights granted. You may decide to practically give all rights to someone who uses your license, your work. CC licenses are accompanied by some icons that show the properties of the license, and all the time, for any type of license, you have this attribution icon with this man inside, and it means what I already told you. So this license, if you choose this license for your work, other may use your work and must give you credit to say you are the original author, but not in a way that suggests you endorse. You don't approve or authorize them. They just by default must mention you as an author. But if they want to use your work without mentioning you, you have to give them permission, a special permission for them to do it, as with any other copyrighted work. Share alike icon means that anyone can copy, distribute, display, and do anything with your work, but as long as he or she distributed this with the same license, so then the sharing is enabled to reach a long way for this work. For example, the next icon is non-commercial. If you include this in the license, then you don't allow the commercial use of your work. And finally, no derivatives means that it can be used only in the original form and no alterations are allowed. So what are the types of CC licenses? They practically are made by combining these icons or those properties. For open science, the most important are, the first one is attribution, CC BY. And maybe you can see this, if you saw the IEEE, this is CC BY, no commercial, no derivatives. But also some papers may use some of these other options. We mentioned public domain. From public domains, the most common one is CC0. So it may be used for databases, and you may use it to waive all your interest worldwide. So even if it is allowed, for example, in some country, if you want internationally to be freely used, you have to include this CC0. Combination of works is not possible for any two different licenses. This table gives you possible combination. For example, you may combine two works where one is CC BY and the other one is also CC BY, or one is CC BY And the other one is CC BY non-commercial. When there is a black X, you cannot combine those papers, for example, works with those licenses into one. So in summary, most common options that are chosen for open science are CC BY license for articles, for books and reports, for example, and CC0 for databases. Just to summarize, with CC BY, for example, you let others distribute, remix, tweak, and build upon the work, even for commercial purposes, as long as they give you the credit as the original author. The idea is, the essence of open science, to enable maximum dissemination use of licensed materials. Maybe Professor can comment more on databases. Now we don't have enough time in this training to do this at this moment. So I think that the examples are most important. So this first one example, I will now again switch to the sharing. I will show you now directly from a Creative Commons site how to choose a license for your work. What is the scenario here for this exercise? You are the author of a website that's called Internet of Things and Electric Cars. You are called John Smith, and what you want is to enable intensive sharing of your ideas without any copyright issues, and also you want to be credited by others for your work. Which license should you choose? Now we will see the process. So you go to Creative Commons site and choose a license, and then you are asked a series of questions. Do you know which license you need? No, that's why I'm going through this process. Next. Do you want attribution of your work? Yes, that's what you requested. By clicking yes, something already appears on the right, but there are still some answers to do. Do you want to allow others to use your work commercially? Yes. Do you want to allow others to remix, adapt, or build upon your work? Yes. Do you want to allow sharing? Yes. And finally, you're asked to confirm. Are you the one? That's important question. For example, are you the one who own the authority to license the work? Maybe it's your institution, not you. You have to be careful. Yes, I own. I have read. I understand. Yes. Next. And what you see on the right is this work licensing under CC BY 40. That's what we already said. This is the most commonly used license for papers, for example. This is license abbreviations. If you want full name of the license, you click here and you see Creative Commons Attribution 40 International. This is the full name of the license. If you click here, you see so-called a deed. This is a human readable form of the license that's very short and understandable for humans. You also have legal form and you have machine readable form, 3 forms. So that is what we already discussed. You're free to share, adapt, attribution, no additional restriction. And you also see this line: the licensor cannot revoke these freedoms as long as you follow the license terms. So you generally, when you choose a license, you cannot revoke this. You cannot take it back. But let's go back here. Number 7 is attribution details. What the site asks you is what's the title of your work. So I can copy this. Internet of Things and Electric Cars is the title of my work. Who is the creator? John Smith is the creator. A link to work is, I don't know, fictive.com. A link to your profile page is fictive2, year of creation 224, and done. Now, because you gave additional data to this in this portal, you have a full definition that someone has to use when he uses your work. So you help others in this way to cite you properly. So if someone uses, we will see the next example now. If someone uses your work, he should write or she. Internet of Things Analytic Cast by John Smith is licensed under Creative Commons, or shortly just CC by. And then you can click on HTML because you're author of the website. You can copy this code to a website, and then on your website, this will appear here. So that's as much as we have time, short definition. That's this exercise. And next question that we already started this issue is how to attribute CC license work. So in this next case, you see, you are somebody else. You are Jane Smith, for example. You want to cite the work of John Smith that he done. He made this website, and you would want to use it in the following way. On one page, you will have the exact copy of his work, of his website, and on the other web page, you will make some tweaking, some remixing. For example, you will transform some chapters into bulleted points, and this will be your only change. So what is the legal way to do it with this open license and not to have any issues with licensing? So here, you should read the text of this WikiHow article, or just read this presentation. It should be often enough. Here we recommend you this article. In this article, you have the template of this citation. But as you saw now, because the Creative Commons site has changed, already in their website, you have this option to help the others attribute. But here's the template. Title of the work by the author, including page link, is licensed under, and which license. So generally, we get to this, what we already created. So, Internet of Things and Electric Cars by John Smith is licensed under CC by 40. We already got this automatically by site. If you want to change something, you have to be careful. You have to add this slash. So after the slash, you state what changes are made. In this example, you will say Internet of Things and Electric Cars by John Smith is licensed under CC by 40 / original chapter separated into bulleted points. Generally, this text here is free. You can write something similar. The main thing is that you state what is done here. And let me please go back to the presentation. So you can see better. Okay. Because often you will not use this in websites, maybe in papers. I give you an example that's related to papers. Concretely, this is practically a paper that I wrote. Also, so if you want to use the work that is published in open access, first of all, you can use figures, tables, or photographs freely, as long as you give credit to original author. So this includes that when I wrote together, Professor Trajanovic and me, we wrote a monograph that included the work from one of our papers that is published in open access. In this monograph, we used the same picture, the same image from our previous paper, but we had to include this statement. You see, this below the figure, we have what is in this figure. And then you have this footnote. Footnote says the title of this original paper by me and others is licensed under CC BY and / what we have changed. We changed one of the titles here on the image because we thought it would be better to write like this. So when you do something like this, you don't have any issues with licenses. Concerning text, that's the other story, because in general, you should be able to do the same with the text. For example, you can cite few paragraphs or half of the paper, but still you have academic code of good conduct. What does it mean? It to be a case of plagiarism. So in general, it's not good practice to use even open access text. Maybe you can use something very shortly, just to say directly what someone wrote, but then you also have to do this statement like this. But it's not a good practice in general. Only these figures should be used. Concerning the software, it's a bit different story. The same licenses are not used, but maybe Professor will tell you something later. We don't have time to discuss it in detail. And finally, we mentioned intellectual property rights and open science. And we already mentioned it's very important to be aware who is the one who can decide to lift restrictions. Is this you personally, your group, your institution, maybe your funder or somebody else? You have to be aware of this. So also it's important to define who holds copyright or any other rights to research output. This is related. And this may be different. It depends on the country, depends on the institution. There exist different intellectual property policies in universities and public research institutions. So what we as researchers usually see here through our careers, we have different messages concerning the open science. From one side, we have the demand for all the research to be publicly available. This is, according to open science principles, our basic responsibility to make this knowledge available to the public. But for some stakeholders, may also include patent, for example, or some other intellectual property issues. For example, if you're working on a project, we have an innovative project with a private company. We, of course, cannot publish all the data related to this project in open access. So we must state this as a reason that we don't publish this. Also, this is generally some startups involved, other commercial, non-commercial projects. So what does European Union say about this? They say, as you may have heard, that the current approach is to make the data as open as possible and as closed as necessary. So all the options are covered by this, what they say here. So if you are not sure about this, you can consult your university, for example, to provide you some intellectual property rights stewardship. What is your case, concrete case? And really, in the same university, same institution, for the same research group, this policy may, this concrete case may vary from case to case. So that's all the time that we had to discuss this topic. And now I also give again floor to Professor Trajanovic, the next topic.
Okay. Thank you, Nikola. I hope you can see my screen. So let us speak about open research data in more details. So once again, what is open research data? So those are the data that can be freely accessed, reused, remixed, and redistributed for the purposes of academic research and teaching and even beyond. Ideally, open data have no restriction on reuse or redistribution and appropriate license, but you should follow universal participation principle, but be careful with sensitive data. Later on, I will give you more information. What are the sensitive data? The open research data at most should be connected with the obligation to attribute and share alike licensing, as Nikola told you already. But let me introduce another term, is fair data principles. The FAIR is acronym of for other term is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So it's acronym FAIR. What does mean findable? It means that the data are easy to find, and the metadata, not only data, but also metadata for both humans and computers. It should be enabled by machine-readable, persistent identifier, PID, and with the metadata. Accessible means that data can be retrieved using open protocols, possibly including authentication and authorization. Sometimes it is very important. So even data are partially open, sometimes authentication and authorization is obligatory. Then the FAIR data should be interoperable, can be combined and used with other data or tools. And finally, reusable means that the data are well described so that they can be replicated and combined in different settings. So actually, what is the difference between FAIR data and open data? There is a difference. Open data should be available to everyone to access, use, and share without license, copyright, or patents. At most, it should be subjected to attribution or share alike licenses, as we already mentioned. But FAIR data use the term accessible to mean accessible to appropriate people at the appropriate time in appropriate way. So yes, the data are open, but with some limitation. Data can be fair when it is private, when it is accessible by a defined group of people, or when it's accessible by everyone. And in that case, actually we have open data. So this is the main difference. For example, new experimental data are accessible in some period by generator and their group to start with consortial partner as the findings become refined with the public upon publication. Then in the case of personal sensitive data, some of the data may never be accessible and usable. In the case of commercially sensitive data, the data may held privately for stretch of time, after collection and interpretation. Users are also free to use more restrictive licenses to govern how the data may be reused, or even sometimes data cannot be reused, like in the case of defense project or very sensitive personal data collection and similar like this. With appropriate data management planning, much sensitive and proprietary data can be shared, reused, and fair. When we are talking about metadata, the metadata can almost always be shared because they do not uncover data, but just tell us what are content of the data that we collect. Guidance and best practice for sharing sensitive data are regional specific. Have you that in mind? Because there are different regulations in different regions and even in different countries. If you want to know how to share personal data, copyright and database, please visit the link on the end of this slide. It is very, very useful content published there. Let me give you more ideas what are the sensitive personal data. Actually, the GDPR, you are aware about GDPR, it's European law. The personal data is defined as any information relating to an identified or identifiable natural person, and they are known as data, which are known as data subject. According to GDPR, special categories of personal data are racial and ethnic origin, political opinion, religious and philosophical beliefs, trade union membership, genetic data, biometric data, data concerning health, data concerning a natural person's sex life or sexual orientation. All those data should not be publicly accessible. As example of GDPR of data protection policy, you can find data protection policy in the case of OpenClick project, and you can download the whole document from the site. Here is the link, and data protection policy here is a pretty long document which contains data protection principles, general provision, lawful purpose, data minimization, accuracy, archiving, security, and breach. So you can freely download it as an example. Starting from the Horizon Europe program, not only open access is obligatory, but also a data management plan is obligatory. It is also part of the project proposal, but later on, during the project implementation, you can change data management plan because some new issues are arising or something else. And it is a brief plan to define how the data will be created, how it will be documented, who will be able to access it, where it will be stored, who will back up it, and whether and how it will be shared and preserved. It is obviously that the data management plan actually define a fair principles to access the data. If you are interested in more detail about this issue, please visit the link on the end of this slide. And also it can be very, very useful for you. In short, a data management plan consists of data summary, how the FAIR principles are ensured, what are the other research outputs from the project, from your research. The allocation of the research should be defined. The data security should be also defined. Ethical issue and other issue, if any, is also part of data management plan. If you are interested on an example, you can download it from the OpenClick portal that I already gave a link. So there are four ways how to make research data accessible. One of the easiest is when you publish your article. In the most of the journal, you can also publish not only the content of the article, but also associated data on which the paper conclusion are drawn. So the advantage of such an approach is that data are in accordance with the requirement of the journal. They easily fit into the work itself, but there are disadvantages. It costs money. Sometimes publishers are asking for the money you to publish the data. Also, such a data can be subject of copyright of the publisher. So even if those data are yours, publisher puts some copyright on the data. So if you want to publish the same data in another journal, you have to ask publisher for the permission. Even those data are initially yours. In the short, it is probably not a long-term solution. So you'd better to use. You can use it, but you'd better to use other possible way to publish, to make your research data accessible. So second thing is to host your research data on your site, on site which is under your control. So advantage is that data are easily accessible and can be found and downloaded, and without any charge for you, because this is your site. But there is a disadvantage that because there is a problem with the cost of maintaining the site. Sometimes you have to pay for a domain, or internet domain, or anything else. So the third and maybe the best way is to deposit data in a repository developed to support data publication. As one of is Zenodo, but there is other. The advantage is actually that there are already built-in search capabilities, so the data are easily findable, not only for people, but also for the computers. They are available to a large number of users. They can accept data in different type of formats, but there are some disadvantages. The rules may not completely match your rules. The editor has no control over the posted data. And finally, there is a possibility to publish a data paper about a data set, but it as a preprint in a journal or in a data journal dedicated to support data papers. So those are the way to make a data accessible. And the second question is how to make data open. There is I will show you just key steps in a short. First, choose your data set. Then apply an open license for the data set. It means determine which intellectual property rights exist in the data. Apply a suitable open license that license all of those rights and support openness. And finally, if you can't do this, go back to step 1 and try to find another way to open the data. Then make the data available, and finally make it discoverable. Post it on the web, optionally organize a central catalog to list open data set. And on the end, let me tell you just 2 more things. We didn't mention it, maybe during this presentation, is open research software. Sometimes during our research, our researchers make specific software, in order to proceed to get or process a data. So, in order such a software. Sorry.
Ναι, θυμάμαι. Πώς είπατε την εταιρεία λίγο, δεν τη συγκράτησα.
Συγγνώμη, λίγο μπορείτε να κλείσετε το μικρόφωνο.
Background. Okay.
So, in order to make
στο email μου
reusability of the data, such a software should be also available as an open research software.
Ωραία. Πότε το στείλατε? Δεν το...
Παρακαλώ, Μανώλης. Μικρόφωνο.
It must be distributed in source or in compiled form in order to be ready for use immediately. And such an open research software must be shared under a license that allows modification, derivation, or redistribution. And finally, let's say a couple of words about open source hardware. As specific software that we already mentioned, there sometimes in the experiment we are using specific set of hardware, not only computer hardware, but sometimes specific sensors and measuring device and something like this. So the open source principles also extend to hardware. Specific hardware includes everything from sequencing tools and microscopes to specialized testing equipments and particles colliders and so on can be used during the research. The ability to use, study, replicate, and improve scientific instrumentation is a central part of experimental science. And if you want to replicate some research, you need the same hardware. So in order to allow this to be to let's say underpin open science in that part of the open science principle, open science hardware community was built, and it's leading a push for open source movement to include scientific tool, hardware, and research infrastructure to the global open science hardware roadmap. So as you can see, not only open access to publication, not only open data, but we now speak about open software and open source hardware. It is all of this, especially data, is more and more important in the era of artificial intelligence. There is no any use of artificial intelligence without open data. So I hope that though this presentation, this webinar was useful for you, and that now you have a better idea what is the open science and why it is important for all researchers. Thank you very much for your attention. It is the last slide of today's presentation, and now we are open if there are any questions or your question now immediately. Just let us know. I will take a look now in the chat to see is there any question.
Yes, there is a question, Miroslav, from Mrs. Natalia Georgiou. What happens in EDF project if we have an open data strategy in the grant agreement, but at the same time we are restricted by export license restrictions?
It's defense funding, yeah?
Yes, probably yes. So let me repeat the definition of open science, open data. The data are open as much as possible and close as much as it is needed. So in such a case, you can stay with the let's say very, very restricted open data.
Yes, I will give a link, for example, in France, how they do it. I found.
Meanwhile, Fotini, is there any other question?
No, there is not. No, there is not, Miroslav. I checked.
It is because we are very, very clear.
Okay. Yes, of course. As every time. It was a very interesting webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate your clear presentation and in-depth presentation that you prepared. And we are looking forward for next time. Thank you very much, both of you.
Yes, let's next time be in reality. I don't like webinars.
Oh, yes.
I would
Thank you
like
very
to
much.
I would
Let's
like to
hope,
be
yes.
in Thessaloniki now and use opportunity to visit Laladica, some restaurant.
Laladica, yes. And the other one that you like, the other taverna you like, the Ruga. Ruga.
Yes, yes. Yeah, yes, believe me, and the incoming week I will spend in Thessaloniki. I have some meeting there, so I will use the opportunity to visit Laladica and Ruga too.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay. Again, thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for organizing
And
the
we are
webinar.
waiting for your slides because many participants requested to have the slides.
Yes, yes. We will send it to you, and then you can share it. Freely.
Yes, thank you very, very much,
the
Nikola and
the
Miroslav.
license of the
Yeah.
presentation is CC BY, so you
Ah,
can use
yes.
use whatever you want.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Bye.
Miroslav, Nikola. Thank you. Have a nice
Bye.
day. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.